Welcome back, guys, to the Beyond Condition podcast, the voice of bodybuilding. And today's voice, my favorite, Tony Hughes, is back on the podcast. Thank you for coming on, my friend.
All right, Sarah, thanks for having me.
Super cool to continue connecting with you because, of course, we came back from Thailand, but we've been speaking for ages now, right? Years.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
And you've just had a bit of a, what we call it, a hypo.
Yeah, I went hypoglycemic, low blood sugar. I rarely do cardio, and I just did cardio. And I noticed the more muscle I get, the easier it is for me to go hypoglycemic. So I just did 30 minutes of cardio, and I was drenched in sweat, felt dizzy, felt starving, hungry, which is good. These are all the signs that my body's giving me to that I need to have some sort of sugar intake. So I came to the restaurant real quick and I'm drinking smoothie, which is active sugar and also good because the fruit specifically helps balance the liver glycogen. So the liver can help balance the rest of the bloodstream's blood sugar. And
Mm,
then I ate a bunch of potatoes and beans,
mm.
and now I've got ice cream and fudge cake coming. So the wonderful thing about having more muscle and about having slim pills is that I can eat a lot of carbs and not put on any fat. Problem is, oh, I just realized, that's why I took these and then I did cardio. I just realizing it now that I look at the bottle, obvious,
Mm, mm.
because I took them at the end of my last meal. And these are very strong. So it basically takes all the sugar, glucose from the bloodstream, forces it into the muscles, and therefore the blood glucose can drop low if you're not eating enough. So that's what happened, and here we are inside a restaurant, packing as many carbs in me as possible, so I don't pass out and die.
I do. The only time that I can relate to going hypo is when I did use insulin for a bit and I got my nutrition timing wrong and I'd never experienced a hypo before. It was new to me. And this is something about, talking about things like this on the pod because like I thought I was going to die. Like I,
Mhm.
I was just, and like you've just got to get something in you, but you're in this like when it really hits, you sort of go in between life and death. And it's quite a weird sensation. And again, it's like with extreme steroid use that we're going to talk about today, I don't think that, people would necessarily know that unless their mates told them or whatever about the nutrient timing around these things.
Coach Trevor, who had huge amount of muscle mass, he would go hypo all the time. And we would stop at convenience stores and buy him candy. It was like if he didn't eat enough carbs on a daily basis, he would. And I don't know. I've hung out with a lot of other big bodybuilders. I haven't seen it being that much of a problem. Although that's probably because most of the big bodybuilders are very disciplined with their diet.
Yeah.
They don't let themselves go into a caloric deficit because they would muscle. So they don't go into a caloric deficit and they're eating 6 meals a day with a lot of carbs, so they're not going to go hypo. Whereas Coach Trevor had a huge amount of muscle, not on any diet, and would go 2 long periods of time without carbs and then go hypo.
Yeah, yeah. Because of course, if you're using insulin, you can use carbs within the workout, can't you? Like sweets or a Lucozade or whatever it is, just to keep it topped up. Oh, we've got some nice ice cream there as well.
Mm.
You got to watch
This
the
is
YouTube.
our excuse to be able to eat a lot so you don't die.
I
Oh, when I did the math class, I had the phrase "grow or die" because during the math class we would use a lot of insulin, and then you have only two choices. You use a lot of insulin, you either die or go into a coma, or you eat. So it's a way to force clients in the dangerous way. That's why I would only do that in person. I would give them a huge amount of insulin and then say, okay, you still feel like not eating it, right? Because now it's life or death. So now you either eat or you die.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It
And
is.
of course, they're going to eat and then they're going to get huge. Yeah.
Get huge or die trying. Now, with the sort of experiments and what you're known for from a lot of people in the space, if anyone's listening that sort of doesn't know you, obviously you've been on the pod before, but When you first got exposed to steroids, as it were, or however we want to frame that, how did that sort of take us back to where that actually started?
I think when I was 21 years old, I had a lot of friends using steroids, and I didn't use steroids until I was 30.
Okay.
So I had been around it for 9 years before I actually used it myself. And I, at the time, I was a dogmatic natty, a noble natty. And I thought, okay, they're going to cheat. They're going to take shortcuts. They're going to use steroids, and I'm just going to outwork them. I'll just train harder. I'll eat more. I'll get bigger than them, stronger than them, and I'll prove that hard work is more important than the chemistry. And to an extent, I mean, basically, I was able to keep up with them, but I had to work so much harder at it. And they just were on autopilot, easy mode. They skipped days from the gym, they skipped meals, and we ended up getting all pretty much the same results. Actually, one guy got really inferior results because he was training too scientifically. Instead of training hard, he was following all the scientific stuff. He's like, oh no, you got to use this repetition speed. You got to do this many reps. We're like, geez, trust me. Like at this point, I've been already training since I was, 14 years old. And even at 21, I already have a lot of experience. And I'm like, just trust me. Like I've tried every technical workout plan there is. You just have to live hard and feel the pain. And he's my science. There's the YouTubers, all these science YouTubers that are natural. They do these documentary style, analyzing all the science of how to train to build muscle. I mean, all of this stuff matters, but it's like the foundation is hard training, and then you add the technical stuff on top. And yes, okay, now it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
But this guy was just trying to do it technically with all the technical stuff about hard work, and it didn't work. Even though he was on steroids, like he looked great, he looked good. But my other friend who trained at least hard and me looked way bigger. That was my first steroid experience. So I thought, okay, I can just get there without steroids. But it was later when I was 30 when I finally realized I didn't grow any muscle after age 20. I reached my absolute peak at 21, and then your body just without the extra chemistry is just not going to put on any muscle. Finally, that peak. When a friend, when I was 30, did a competition and in 45 days transformed from a dad bod to a ripped bod. And he had more muscle maturity definition than I did. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just realized 9 years, no progress. I went back to look at my pictures. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? Like this brain, if they look back at themselves as a natural 5 years ago, they might look at their body might look the same. And they're like, well, I thought I'd been putting on muscle. I thought I'd been making progress. No. So I was that person.
And when you first went down the route, was there any like, oh God, this is daunting, or because you've been around it, were you just like, I just want to go for it?
That same friend that was lifting all technical was the one who gave me my first injection with a gigantic needle that was really painful and not the optimal position on the glute. So it was really painful. My first maybe 6 injections until I finally decided there must be a better way and started experimenting myself. My first 6 injections were miserable. I was in so much pain. I'm a lawyer. I'm going to court. I'm sitting with clients, and I'm always sitting on one butt cheek because the other butt cheek got inflamed and painful.
Yeah.
And I had to rotate both sides. So then some days both cheeks would be painful. Yeah, I remember that miserable it was. So yeah, and then I was like, oh my God. So now I have to inject myself twice a week for, all suffer through all this pain. And I gotta strategize like, when am I gonna inject myself? When can I do leg day? Because my butt's too sore to train leg. So yeah, it was pretty sort of miserable like that. On the other hand, when I started taking oral T-ball, my performance skyrocketed and I could track my performance because I was doing stair runs. So I know how fast I could run the stairs and how many rounds I could do. And I had like a 25% performance increase very quickly on the T-ball. So the oral T-ball was amazing, but the injections were absolutely miserable.
I've seen those really big, they're like harpoons, the big pins that sometimes people use. Again, it's like, I don't know if you're not taught or shown the way of the insulin pins and the different pins, how would you know as well, I suppose? Because it's like these steroids and getting these compounds, it's not legal, as it were, is it? So it's like, how can you sort of question it to a certain degree? And this is where I think sometimes people get into difficult scenarios because they're scared to ask questions, they don't know what to ask, they want to use steroids, but it's like, and this is where, the era where you had Boston Lloyd, Rich Piana, yourself, the little gang that formed. And there's two sides to it, isn't there? People are saying, oh, you're, promoting it too much. You shouldn't be putting those things online, and Boston put all the YouTube videos and things. But there's the other side to it that he was showing how to pin and how he did it, and so it's educational as well. So it's a bit of a tricky one, isn't it, in the space?
Mhm. Yeah, it's true. Some people are influenced by, they see something, they do it, maybe they shouldn't do it. But I mean, we can't protect these idiots all the time. Otherwise, society can never function. I think it's much better to give everybody access to all the information, and the idiots are going to kill themselves one way or another anyways. If it's not steroids, it's going to be something else, like not looking both ways before walking across the street or something. So I don't like the idea of protecting the lowest common denominator and preventing everybody else from access to make good decisions for themselves. I believe give all the information and let people decide.
I
You more
feel
comfortable
like,
with it?
yeah, I mean, I am personally quite transparent about being assisted myself, and I get people listen to the podcast and ask questions as well. And I feel like this is the thing. When I first went down the assisted route, it was actually to prop up my tests because it was like I was 0.01 my testosterone, and one of my reasons to go on femtest was to actually regain some testosterone and go down the assisted route. Then I started anabolics, etc. And where I talk about it, and for me personally, I'm not genetically gifted, and my physique progress is night and day difference to when I was natty. Like what you were saying earlier, I can really relate to that. Even through the point of off season as a female, my body composition is so much better than it was being natural. Now, I'm not trying to say everyone should use steroids, as it were, but it's like that sparks intrigue. And then, of course, people say, I've done a prep now, and I like to take people through a prep first if I can as a natural, see if they actually like it, see if they can do it, and then, of course, give the education to move forward. And I feel like that's sometimes missed as well if you just jump on for the sake of it. But is there a right and wrong?
What's the SPEM test? I mean, it means female testosterone, but I never heard that
Yeah.
term before.
So it's basically dosed down for a female. I wanted to ask you actually with test, if you were working with females, would you recommend tests that you would take as a male?
Mm,
Depending on the person, I suppose.
so so Enhanced has a product called 3AD, which is a pro hormone,
Hmm.
and instead of using testosterone, we use a 3AD. For some reason, it's not testosterone. It doesn't even metabolize itself into testosterone. But for some reason, it causes the woman's body to produce a lot of testosterone.
Okay.
So this 3AD supplement, I think, is probably the healthiest, the cheapest, the most convenient way for women to get testosterone.
Mm.
So I got to get this to you for sure. I mean, I should have mentioned this a long time ago, but now we're talking. It's reminding me, like this is really amazing for female clients. The only problem is that because it's causing the woman's body to produce more of her own testosterone, women don't have testicles; they have adrenal glands. It'll actually the adrenal glands produce testosterone with when using 3AD. The only problem is that like one 3AD pill skyrockets a woman's testosterone so much it might be too much. Too much testosterone for a woman can make a woman quite aggressive and really sexually aggressive as well, which sounds like a wonderful thing, but if that doesn't get satisfied, then it just turns into aggression.
Yeah.
So what I do is I give my girlfriends one pill of 3AD once in a while, just to jump their sex drive up at a time when I know that I can satisfy it. And then it's kind of like you get an afterglow afterwards for a while where they have increased energy and motivation and drive and sexual energy, but their testosterone almost kind of down. So the problem with it is that you get these big testosterone spikes, and you really have to be careful timing because even just one pill will do that for a woman. It's funny because for a man takes one pill, they're going to feel nothing. But a man takes four pills, now you start seeing muscle building, but you don't really get this crazy, like insane sexual desire and aggression in women. So this is a supplement that works like way better for women than men. Like it still works for men, but for women, it's I've never seen her like it as far as I know, except for DHEA itself, like Blackhawk's testosterone booster. Not just DHEA, all the ingredients, but DHEA still a similar thing at a much lower level.
Oh, with females as well, there is, of course, and it's something I speak about, the risk of virilization, when we're using different compounds. One of the questions I actually had was how to mitigate virilization in females, or, if then you do virilize, is there anything that can help you to sort of come back, as it were? I mean, that's a topic in itself that doesn't really get spoken about in the female realm. So I actually, you'll love this. I did a podcast myself on essentially have I virilized, just talking about my own virilization, and there is certain things that have changed, and a lot of people were like, fucking hell, you've spoken about, because partway through I was like, I'm going to address the elephant in the room, clit enlargement, because it's like, oh, I don't want to talk about it, and I'm just like, do you know what, it's a thing. It is a thing. And again, do you know it's a thing unless you're told? And I got a lot of traction from that, just talking about the side effects that I've got and my own risk reward, as it were. But be interesting to have your thoughts on mitigating essentially virilization, if there's any things you could share.
Mm-hmm. So about the enlarged clit, I was going through my old photos on my phone, and I found a section one of me playing with a girl with huge clit. And I was looking at it going like, wow, I don't remember that. I don't remember ever seeing a clit that big, but there I was with her with the clit. And then I was thinking, God, I would really like to see that girl again. Because I remember, oh, I watched the video. I didn't have to remember. I was watching that because the clit was bigger, it was very sensitive and it would get hard. And I could just like barely touch it. And she was so horny and be able to orgasm so much easier. And I thought, this is amazing. Like I'm looking at this, like, where is this in my life? Like, and the problem is the video didn't have my face and the girl's face. It's just like this area down here. So now I'm like, oh, where is this girl? How can I find her? And I was concerned about my girlfriend's clips growing on something like 380. And we don't take it often, but when we do, it's so powerful, and their clip becomes super sensitive, and they can come much easier, orgasm much easier. So then I was thinking, what if their clits do grow bigger? Like, and I used to think that was a terrible thing. And now I'm actually thinking that I want all of them to have bigger clits. Not because I mean, yes, okay, it's also visually interesting, but it's mainly because it's just more of their sex organ. They they orgasm easier. It's easier to have sex. It's so much easier. It's just everything sexually is enhanced. So it's interesting when we talk about clit enlargement being such a negative thing. I think it's probably more like 80% positive, but it's the voice or the skin or hair growth. These would be the features that we would still want to avoid. There's aldactone, which blocks androgen in the female body, but then the problem is you're also blocking androgens, so it also blocks muscle building. So that's why I still really like SARMs, or things that are highly anabolic but less androgenic for women. But on the other hand, I used to have a lot of female bodybuilding friends and bodybuilder friends that female bodybuilder girlfriends. And I used to think, oh, their girlfriend's masculinizing, all these, like, you want your woman as feminine as possible. But actually, if if I'm in Western society and only get to choose one woman, I might want her to be a little more masculine sometimes, more sexually aggressive, more driven. Like if I'm gonna have a life, then having a woman, if she's gonna actually be partnered with more testosterone is better. Now, I have many girlfriends, so they can all be super feminine. But if I had to have one life partner, I think one with some masculine energy, which maybe a lot of women could benefit from more testosterone, just to have more drive and more motivation, push through pain threshold is a long answer, but I have a lot of thoughts on
I do think as well, from doing that podcast, well, I know I did have a fair few females reach out and say their partner really likes the clit enlargement, and I don't see it as a negative. Like you say, it's sensitive. You get heightened very quickly, and the sexual experience for me, it's actually enhanced it rather than made it worse.
it. Yeah. So with your clients, you hear that feedback also? Is some of them that are enhanced, updating you about the thorough thing?
So most of my clients are actually single, which is interesting. I had this thought process the other day. I was like, I'm attracting single females. But from the podcast, some of the listeners, I get quite a close bond with them, you see, and we sort of talk about things. And it's like my partner really fucking likes it. It's the sensitivity, and it's just that I don't know, it's heightened. Like you're just like, and then obviously, of course, there can be anabolics in the mix. And for me personally, probably maybe more so Anavar, Primo as well, but I'm like, whoa, this is good. And you mentioned like a masculine energy. It is. And for me personally, it's been quite a good experience to be a bit more dominating in that side of it, just being honest, it's quite a nice feeling.
Mhm. Do you feel, I feel like one risk is if a woman becomes stronger and more masculine, then maybe it's harder for her to be submitted by the man sexually. Then, so how does that work? If you become stronger physically, mentally, everything, do you have to train your husband to then be even more dominant with you in the bedroom, or is this something that even gets thought about?
I feel like if you're open to experimenting with your other half and being like brutally honest, like we are today, that you can almost share the roles. So like sometimes maybe one of you dominates a bit more, other times the other one and then we've spoken about this on a pod before. It's like when either of you becomes more submissive and you play that role, like if it's communicated in that way, it can be really heightened. You can get really turned on that one of you is taking that role and you balance it out rather than one of you being the most dominating. Personally, for me, it's a vibe.
So do you dominate him like extremely? Do you really dominate him once in a while?
When I'm on anabolics, yeah, I do like for me as well. I always used to be a bit like with sex, I'd be like, and then it's
Mm.
the partner, right? Like when you get the right partner, and then it's like it feels good. It does feel good because it's, sharing that role, and then I'm happy to then flip, reverse, and be, the submissive one, which is it's exciting as well because again, with bodybuilding in itself, you can become quite highly strung. Like you're like, I'm a bodybuilder, nutrition, training everything's bodybuilding. Having sex is a really good fucking stress management, I personally think.
Yeah, against the aggression. I think if people have sex a lot more, they're going to be a lot less aggressive, a lot happier. I mean, that's why I have a lot of sex. So I'm super calm. If I don't, like I tried the even not just sex, but also orgasm is important for me because I tried the semen retention thing, but then I'm just going to get really aggressive. And I know it's supposed to be a good thing, like build up energy, but some people that can just have too much energy. It's better we stay calm. Better we have a lot of orgasms. Calm
In the
down.
bedroom.
Yeah, and especially like a bodybuilder on trend, although they have a harder time finishing, but it's important for them to have sex and orgasm because otherwise they're going to carry that aggression with them in the public, which is not probably good for the public or their future.
Yeah, yeah. I did actually have a question about Tren. So, with Tren, do you think it's necessary to make it to the Open Olympia to take Tren?
No, no. Could use Winstrol instead, but Winstrol is equally dangerous, or actually probably worse. I'd say you have to have either Winstrol or Tren or an absolutely flawless prep with like a lot of Mastron and Primobolan type thing. Either way, either way, there's going to be side effects of any of those protocols. Although, I mean, the Mastron and Primobolan is just going to be, you know, if they relied on that as it gets closer to a competition, they're probably going to lose all their hair. So,
Mm.
uh, yeah, I if it's me personally going to a competition in the future, it's going to be like Tren, but a low dose, and then Winstrol at a lower dosage. I'd rather take a lower dosage of each than take a higher dosage of either one. And most bodybuilders use both before a competition. But I'd say either one or the other or both. But I think it would be usually for most people really healthier to use both so that they can go lower dosage because the side effects come more with a higher dosage.
Yeah, because of course I feel like there's more exploration now to, like you said, lower doses and multiple compounds now over a prep or over an off season or however it is, rather than just sky high on one. With when you put compounds in, I've had a few discussions about this before. If you're putting compounds in as a female and you're, aware of virilisation, would you say putting one compound in at a time to assess your tolerance is a good idea?
Yeah, it just takes a lot more time. But yeah, because especially with women, they're using such lower dosages and there's a big variability in the sensitivity they have to it. So it's important if they don't assess it one compound at a time, they take it all at once, they're never going to know which compound made the problem. And then you have to do two. I mean, it's just a scientific method, I guess, we're applying to it because if they took them all at once and they get a side effect, then they have to go back and take each one by itself again to find out which one created the side effect. So now they had to have the side effect twice. On the other hand, if they took all the compounds at once and they didn't have a side effect, then they basically did a whole bunch of experiments at the same time. But
Yeah.
the safer way would be to try one at a time.
Yeah, that's what, generally speaking, if I speak to anyone about that, is that's what we would look at because it's like, even, when you're changing nutrition, training, how do you know if something works if you've changed loads of stuff? I don't really know where we're at. And of course, it's going to be individual risk versus reward as well. We had a question about menopause. So if there's any considerations around menopause and steroid use, I don't know if you've got any information there.
It makes me nervous. It does because I don't know what triggers menopause, and women hit menopause at different stages. If the woman's not worried about having kids, then menopause just means stop producing estrogen and you can supplement with estrogen. So it's not the end of the world. When a woman, if I'm a woman and I hit menopause, I'm just going to take estrogen. I know that comes with the risk of cancer, but that can be mitigated with plenty of other things as well. But I've seen women who don't take estrogen after menopause age very fast. And women who do take estrogen after menopause, they don't age any faster. They still look the same. They actually it's amazing. Estrogen is such an amazing anti-aging compound for the skin and hair and everything else. So I'm actually going to supplement with estrogen probably as I get older, and make sure I have higher side for longevity purposes later. Um, But when it comes to using compounds, like I do get a little bit nervous of even SARMs, but especially of steroids as a woman gets into her 40s, because what triggers it, I don't know. And SARMs and steroids definitely mess with a woman's menstrual cycle. So it is working through pathways that affect not just change their hormone profile, but actually change like an upstream mechanism that's getting some sort of feedback
Mm, mm.
that could be related to the same triggering mechanisms that that causes menopause. That being said, I don't remember a woman ever telling me that, like, I took steroids and then I had early menopause or something like that. But then again, you never know when your menopause would be versus if when you took a compound, when it's actually caused that. And you couldn't figure that. You would never know that. You would never know. If you knew exactly your menopause is going to happen at age 50, and then you use compounds and it happens at age 43, then you know, but you don't know when menopause is going
Mm. It is as well. It's what compound are you using? What's it for? Where are you at on your journey? This question in particular came from a competitor that's got one more season left. So I'm guessing she's menopausal at this time. And she asked about, is there any spicy recommendations of steroids that you would say? And I guess it's an open book depending on what your, the virilization as well, on top of if that would coincide with menopause, because it's a bit of an open can of worms, isn't it?
to. By default, I just like SARMs
Yeah.
or just low dose Anabolic,
Mm,
just something. And for a woman, like that's just one small piece of the puzzle. There's so many other elements to it. There's so many other amazing supplements, and heck, just getting in the gym and diet obviously as a foundation.
mm,
But it gets so complicated and takes so much experimentation when you get into so many other compounds. Uh, that yeah, it's this is why you really have to custom. Obviously, when you coach people, you have to really customize it because for some women it might not be a concern at all. Some women might want to get pregnant. Some women might care about this versus that. So it just really depends on their risk tolerance threshold. That's why it's so difficult on the internet.
mm.
It's just general information. And people just think it's this way, but they don't realize they're not in the category that something's talking about. Yeah.
Mm. There's such an individual response as well. And I feel like, I personally feel like because I'm so intrigued by it, I'm so interested by it, I'll look into it, I'll talk about it. I can go, I'll put this compound in. This is exactly how I feel with this compound. This is how I feel when I take it out. Okay, so like the Anavata Primo. Try Primo. I prefer Primo. Feel good in the gym, feel good in my personal life. But then I find with a slightly higher dose, post cycle, I'm like, it's like my superpower has been taken away from me. I'm like, oh, for about 14 days. And then I pick back up into feeling normal again. But there's this weird, like, oh, but I prefer the actual effects when I'm on cycle. So again, it's personal preference, isn't it?
So you think when you come off the primo, then you feel it feels like primo would be similar to testosterone as far as with the feeling, probably say psychologically. So is it like the same feeling you think, and you're a woman, but as a man feels going from high testosterone to low testosterone, like the feeling of low testosterone, just feeling like kind of weak, harder to get a pump, less motivated to do anything physical, this type of thing. Same?
It literally, because my ex-husband had really low test, and so I lived with him for many years with it, and it literally felt like when I came off my primo last time, looking at him, I felt like him, like low mood, like you say, no motivation. Like I'd be walking along, and it was just like my feet were heavy, my legs were heavy. I was just like, I don't want to go to the gym, but it only lasted like 10 or 14 days, and I just clocked into my mindset, and I was like, just keep fucking going. But I was just like, oh, feels like a grey cloud is over me. I want my primo back.
Wow, I think every woman should experience what it's like to have high androgens. And then every man should experience what it feels like to have high estrogen and high, well, pred, basically, which I don't know. What would that be feeling like? When in a woman's cycle, well, anyways, it puts a man psychologically where a woman is on a period,
Yeah.
right? So a man should experience that so they understand what a woman is feeling and be able to see that perspective. And a woman should take, have the experience of male hormones to understand too, because women don't understand men sexually oftentimes. But a woman who's taken high testosterone will be like, oh, I understand what men are feeling now. Now the woman can much better understand the man, interact with the man, satisfy the man, everything.
Yeah, yeah, I do having that, being able to experience it yourself. It's like, whoa, the sex drive in that. It's like, whoa, and that's what I thought. I was like, this must be what men feel like, maybe on tren or higher test or whatever. With TRT, what would you say is true TRT? Because of course, this is something that's thrown around.
So I'm in Thailand now, and I have people on a daily basis coming up to me with TRT, and I now have a lot of data. I am shocked at how many guys can get away with such a low dose of like 70 milligrams a week. Put some of these guys at a healthy testosterone level. Like, I mean, my my body metabolizes testosterone so fast that 200 milligrams per week puts me, or 250 puts me at like normal. And I only take 300 a week, so maybe that puts me at like an average of 1,300 or something. What probably some African guys have naturally. So there's a huge variability in how fast our body metabolizes and gets rid of it. And you can see it if you took your blood test every day, you can see a curve of after the injection and then coming down. I think guys, if they're going to inject less frequently, have to inject more because otherwise they're going to drop too low before the next injection. Whereas guys who are doing daily injections can take really, really small amounts. And that's probably the more natural way to do it, to go pulses, the natural pulses, like inject it first thing in the morning, a small amount. But that's a lot of hassle. It's a lot of injections. It can be small injections, but it's still a lot of. Or they could take testosterone undecanoate, orally bioavailable. It's not very It's not very well absorbed, but that's why you take a lot of it. It works fine. So unless people do their blood work, they don't really know exactly where they are. But I'd say I've found the majority of guys probably on less than 125 milligrams in their optimal range. The doctors prescribe 250 in like these TRT clinics that are not like a hospital type, but like a concierge medical telemedicine TRT clinic. They'll usually give 250, and that's more than for pretty much anybody. It's a little bit more than TRT probably for most people. But then you have people like me. Oh, of course, the reason why my body metabolizes testosterone so quickly is probably because I have a fast metabolism. Uh, and I know that's just a broad term, but still, I metabolize a lot of things quickly. And I've been on testosterone for 12 years. So I think what's happened is over time, my body just metabolizes it quicker.
Mhm.
And I also need more. It is like a drug, I guess. There is some desensitization. They say that you don't desensitize androgen receptors, your body makes more androgen receptors, but I can say like 300 milligrams of testosterone 9 years ago felt like a lot more than 300 milligrams of testosterone feels.
Yeah, I wonder as well if there's that titration up potentially over time that you could start at 80 or 125 or whatever, and then maybe that would go up as you get older potentially.
Yeah. Well, that's the argument. That would be the argument also for starting low, because if you're going to have to keep going up, better to start here and go up to here than start here and keep going up to here. Perhaps.
It's like when people start on 500 and you're like, that's not TRT.
Well, a lot of bodybuilders have a little bit of ego that we don't want to admit how much we're taking because then it discredits the hard work or discipline or whatever. And I don't care about what people think about my hard work or discipline. I've already put that in a long time ago. But a lot of people really care about it. And so, yeah, they will say TRT, but really they're on a much higher dosage, and then they can justify it in a number of different ways, such as, oh, I metabolized testosterone quickly. Oh, I've been on a long time, so I desensitized to it. So yeah, I do it myself.
Sports mode TRT.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, sports mode. Heck, I have a car here. One of my cars is so slow, I have to drive it in sports mode all the time. So I'm very familiar with sports mode. Sports mode TRT. Yeah.
I
Just
love
like my car is always on sports mode, I'm always on sports mode TRT.
Why not? Why not? Okay, so next question. So, are steroids being used smarter or being abused more in comparison to a decade or two ago? So, are you still sort of in the space with other people like you were with Rich Piana and Boston and people like that? Do you have people around you in that regard at the moment?
I don't have a lot of famous influencers around me, but I've certainly got, bodybuilders around me.
Hmm.
And, it's interesting. It's just different types of people, really. And it was back then and it is now. Like, I know the guys who take a lot of steroids, but they're not so disciplined with the diet and the training, but they just love steroids, which is fine, which is great. I mean, everybody can choose their drug, pick their poison. It's almost like it's like really recreational for them. They're never going to compete in bodybuilding. They just like to walk around having bigger muscles. They like the pump. They like the psychological effects. These guys are kind of abusing steroids 10, 20 years ago, and they're still abusing steroids now, and they don't care what new information comes out, and they won't touch a SAR because that's lame to them. They want to do the steroids. It's cool. It's fun. It's classic. You know? But then you've got a lot more of a new demographic, health nerds, like these people who are obsessed with health, even though they may know nothing about it, understand it, whatever. They just watch Huberman, for example, Andrew Huberman or something, and they're like obsessed with it. And even though they're doing everything wrong, they're still like it's like become their avatar, their ego, their character, and they are extremely cautious about using steroids, or they won't use them at all. But the ones who are like Huberman guys and they use steroids, oh my God, they're so cautious and they overthink it too much. And they take forever to make a decision about what they're gonna take. And the research never ends. And like, geez, they have just no sense of urgency. And that's annoying. And I deal with that all the time. And I'm still trying to figure out psychologically how to explain to these people how much life, energy, and time they're wasting not making a decision or
Mhm.
being too cautious, obsessively cautious. So that when you ask what's changed, it's just that there's more of
Mhm.
this type of people is the biggest change.
Yeah. I feel like when you have like Huberman and people like that in the space, as you said, you could sort of make a decision, listen to a podcast or whatever, and then you're like, and there's almost too much information in some regards to some of the stuff because it's like so controversial and how do you make a decision? And like you say, you almost get that like you need to make a decision at some point.
Yeah, before there was not enough information. Now there's too much information, and people can't handle it and know what's good information and bad information. So I'm not sure we're in that much of the average person. I'm not sure if they're in that much of a better position, except for now, at least the world has opened up their mind to TRT. And 10 years ago, I was promoting TRT 10 years ago, and everybody thought I was promoting dangerous drugs and everybody's gonna die. And then now it's kind of a mainstream thing, of course, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a positive change. Yeah, it's gonna get more positive. I mean, the more people are because it's gonna spread a lot word by word of mouth. Someone's gonna ask Bill's gonna ask Bob, Bob, wow, you lost a lot of weight. You look so much better. You look so much younger. Wow, you're doing so much better. And Bill or Bob, whichever the one, I forget, is gonna say, oh yeah, I'm taking TRT and peptides and all this other stuff. Oh, okay, and I'm not gonna consider it. So I think it's gonna spread a lot word of mouth.
Mm-hmm. Word of mouth. This is what I'm doing. Sports mode TRT. Uh, so modern day trends on steroid use that you don't like. So we've sort of spoken about a few things where even just then, the decisions and stuff like that. Is there anything that really fucks you off?
it's I think it's still the same ones as before, like they're modern trends, but they were trends before, which is somebody uses steroids wrong and has some side effect and goes super viral over it, like these videos or pictures of someone with crazy acne or oh their hair fell out or all this. And it could be such a rare side effect, and because of their abuse and not using it properly, but then it always gets blown out of proportion in the media. So this is always happens and continues to happen. Um, I'd say that one trend is that a lot more people are using TRT, but there's also a lot of alternatives to TRT, like in clomiphene, for example, that could have gotten them. Like if they're only going to take 75 milligrams of testosterone, then why not just using clomiphene? Because that would be equal to roughly 125 milligrams of testosterone.
Mm.
So just take the pill and don't have to inject them. Um, but I say these things, but you have to repeat them hundreds of times. And also with growth hormone, still the trend of people thinking growth hormone is going to cause cancer. Like, when is this going to? People have been using growth hormone for so many decades now in high dosages, and we don't see any increased incidence of cancer in any of those people megadosing growth hormone. It's going to be the same amount of cancer as non-growth hormone users. So uh, it's still a trend. It's still a popular thing that everybody's paranoid about growth hormone. Yeah, so it's a similar theme here. It's like the trends are mainly over concerned with side effects of these things. Yeah.
I love growth hormone. We've got a question about growth hormone and insulin use as well. It's a specific one which is cool. So I'm gonna try and word this so it's clear. So what's the highest dose of GH and insulin you've used either yourself or with a client, and did you see any noticeable anecdotal differences from what's perceived as normal dose for a higher level bodybuilder? So an example is 8 IUs of GH daily, 20 IUs of Lantus daily, 10 IUs of Nova Rapid daily. So the what's the highest dose I guess we could start with that you've used in conjunction with insulin and growth?
Highest dosage I would have used would have been during a test blast and growth hormone. I think I could get up to like 15 units before my wrists are get really tight and I can't grip the bar because my fingers feel fat and swollen and everything. So like the side effects, above 10 units for me start outweighing the benefits.
Mm.
But I know other guys who use 20 units and they can function on it. So there definitely is a variability to it. But the big problem is that when someone has these side effects, sometimes they get scared and they'll never use growth hormone again. So I get nervous. Like on the one hand, I want to find other people need to find like the upper threshold of what they can take and then not freak out. Just be like, okay, well, that's the dosage that I get these side effects. So let's cut it back by 30% and just stay there so I don't get these side effects. And then insulin, I've never been able, well, I've been able to use a lot of insulin. I've never needed to use a lot of insulin because I maintain very good insulin sensitivities. But when I took 15 units of growth hormone, my blood sugar was really high, and I'm on 20 units of Lantus, and I'm taking 5 units of Novolog or rapid insulin with every meal. And that's a decent amount of insulin for a non-diabetic. And I've got good insulin sensitivity. But what's happening is as the growth hormone goes up, you need more insulin. And then now I know guys that were using, 15 units of growth hormone and 150 units of insulin. And diabetics might use 150 units per day. That might be normal to some diet. I have a type 1 diabetic friend, but that guy was going through hundreds of units of insulin per day, you know? Um, I mean, he has to. There's no abuse there, no nothing. I mean, maybe it's abuse that caused it, but it could also have just been genetic and not maintaining sensitivity. Yeah, so insulin has a huge range variability. Imagine like me taking 10 units of Humalog and not even being able to eat keto. I'm still hypo, even no matter how much I'm eating. Versus someone else might take 10 units of Humalog and be like, I don't feel it. Not much change. They're so desensitized to it. So insulin is a huge range. Growth hormone has a much narrower range. I'd say there wouldn't be much different. One person could take 20 before they can't function properly anymore. And another person might take 8 before they can't function normal anymore. So that's a much smaller range. So
Mm.
I don't know if that answers because trying to compare the two and dosages because of the full spectrum.
And did you notice any noticeable differences from if you did you take the Lantus or Nova Rapid any higher with the GH and notice any changes, or it's just literally individual response?
Well, I did take the insulin high with the growth hormone, but I actually noticed the best results dropping the growth hormone dosage down. So like like I think the optimal for me, if I'm gonna do another mass class, is probably 20 milligrams of MK677 in the morning and maybe like 5 units of HGH in the morning, 5 units of HGH at night, IGF-1 LR3, 100 micrograms, and insulin 20 units of Lantus, and then 5 units of Humalog with a few of my bigger meals. And I know that sounds low, but there's the problem is like I can't eat more than that. That's the maximum. If I take any more, I'll lose weight. I won't be able to gain weight because the metabolism in this stuff just spins with the IGF just spins up so fast. So I personally, if I could eat more, if I could eat 10,000, maybe I could only eat like 7,500 calories, you know.
A
But if
lot.
I could eat 10,000 calories, then I'd be able to take that Humalog up, or I'd be able to take that Lantus up even more.
Yeah. It's when you're trying to eat that amount of calories, like there'd be people listening going, wow, that sounds great, that amount of calories. But when you have to do it relentlessly every day, it's very different, isn't it?
Yeah. For one day, you do a 10,000 calorie challenge. You can hit 10,000 calories for one day. Probably have to add about probably 4,000 calories of junk food has to be in there, or really like, garbage you wouldn't ordinarily eat because it's hard to eat that many calories. But then your digestive system is destroyed after that one day. So how can you do it again another day? I mean, I hear some guys say that they can eat 12,000 calories per day. I've never seen it. I even had one friend who swears by it, and he's a massive bodybuilder. So if anybody can do it, it's him. But every time I'm around him, I don't see him eating that much, and you can't possibly be getting in that many calories unless you're eating like every hour, I think.
12,000's a lot. Like you say, you can do it in an eating challenge on one day, but also trying to do that very relevant point, trying to do that with foods that digest. Like, I mean, you could have things like your jam and easy carbs and stuff, but there's a threshold on that, isn't it? And then it's like the
And I start as I get older, I start feeling a little bit grossed out by thinking about overeating and stuffing myself and the amount of stress that puts on the body. And I take antioxidants. Because I'm trying to do anti-aging stuff. And I think I have aged backwards significantly the last 3 years as a result. But when I think about stuffing myself to put on weight, I would much rather use the chemistry like very intelligently and rely less on trying to stuff myself with huge amounts of food.
yeah, it's okay for a short period of time, but then it's like, give me a diet, give me a diet.
Yeah. But that's the fun part, right? When you stuff yourself, then you actually want to control or restrict your
I want
calories.
to be hungry.
Yeah.
Um, So this it might feed into some of the things we're speaking about. Biggest fuck up you've encountered. So I guess that could be either you personally or someone, and this is through steroid use. So is there like something where you're like, Fucking hell.
Well, um, I mean, I just one thing that comes to mind is crashing estrogen to zero.
Mm.
I mean, that's not as a result of a steroid. That's a result of an ancillary, like taking letrozole or something like that.
Mm.
And then taking estrogen too low. That's just a big mistake that people don't realize is such a big mistake. Every they have to learn it the hard. And what did someone do? Really stupid recently. Stupid. Well, I mean, the funniest one ever is with the pop caps off the vial. You have to pop the cap off.
Yeah.
One guy was pushing the needle through the plastic protector cap, and then he's trying to inject himself
With a
with
blunt.
a needle that he's like, I don't know how it works because it's too strong. Whatever. He's injecting himself with like a really dull. He's like, oh, the needle's so dull. He's like, how do you do it? So he thought you'd have to puncture with one needle, take the oil out, and then backload it in another needle. Because I think he saw my content about backloading another syringe, uh, but then didn't realize that the cap situation is a totally different thing. Yeah. So, but let's see. What about dosages or what type of gear? Or, I mean, I have so many people come up to me in the gym with different weird questions and stuff. So I kind of think what's been the,
You're probably immune to it by now because of what you've seen.
but when you say biggest F up, yeah, biggest F up, I think a lot of guys come up to me and they're like, yeah, I'm running all this gear, and they tell me what they're running. I'm like, oh my God, why are you not huge? Like, what is the missing factor? You look natural.
Yeah.
This is very common. How can so many people be on steroids and still look natural?
Mm.
And I'm always thinking there's something missing. And that's why I made the anabolic matrix or the muscle growth pathways. It's so that way you can diagnose and see what's wrong. And for a lot of people, when I was experimenting on them, getting their lab work, it was the insulin pathway. And they take a ton of growth hormone and steroids, but they don't do anything to recover their insulin sensitivity, and then that's why slim pills, of course. So then when we fix the insulin sensitivity, now everything starts to work together. That was their limiting factor, the rate limiting step. Once that fixed, now everything can start working. So there's some guys in the gym right now here in Thailand that look like normal, but they're taking a lot of gear. And I just, I don't have their lab work and all this to identify it, but that's how we would fix it. We would check their lab work, and then we would experiment with their thyroid, for example. They have a slow thyroid, then it's very hard for them to make progress fast. They recover much slower. Everything is just slower. The body's just slow. Or if their thyroid's too fast, then they have a hard time putting on muscle. They're burning through calories too fast. So you have to balance all the different pathways. So usually the biggest F up, I guess, is was not paying attention to each pathway. You'd think that a big F up would be someone takes too much oral steroids and gets has a liver problem, but I don't see that very often. Um,
I like that you chose. That's really good. You look natural, but you take gear because like that does. I overhear people in the gym saying, "Oh, I'm on this compound now, and I'm thinking, like, is it Duff gear? Like, not to be, but it is. It's like you shouldn't be taking all of this stuff if you look like something is missing here, and it can be nutrition as well, can't it?
yeah, yeah, that's because someone can look pretty good natural if their nutrition is flawless. So nutrition has a big. I think, yeah, I Yeah, come to think of it, I think most people that come up to me, that's their problem. I think they're not eating protein frequently, really. And because I hear these studies, I hear all these influencers saying, "Oh, well, the truth is you only need protein one time per day." And I'm like, I know, like all the guys who intermittent fast, they never grow. So
Yeah, yeah. Mm. We love protein. Protein's a vibe. I fucking love protein. Um, opinions of increased usage for males and females. So we've sort of spoken about that already today. And then the best way to educate people, but I don't feel like there's probably a black and white answer to that, but you've got, like you said, your matrix and what you do. Again, you can educate people, and if they're idiots, difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then, so where is the line of using gear, chasing a goal in the extremity of bodybuilding, like open bodybuilding and abusing gear? How do you know when you're pushing appropriately versus pushing too hard?
How does like a bodybuilder that's gonna a competitive bodybuilder?
Yeah, so with steroid use,
Ah,
yeah. So
yeah.
how like there's that line of abusing it, but you're wanting to get the goal of going to like Open Olympia, say.
Yeah, was it Nick Walker who had to quit, who couldn't compete at the last Olympia? And he was looking so bloated like a balloon, and his stomach, his gut was all puffed out and everything. I mean, um, you know, I don't know exactly what his problem was. I was trying to read between the lines when I heard his interview, but they didn't really give enough clue. But something was off on his health, or his prep was off, and he was just a big bloated balloon of inflammation and water. So that could be from a lot of things. That could be from diet. It could be from just redlining the gear and making some mistakes and getting side effects and inflammation. Could be bad gear, when they're injecting a huge amount of oil. What if the oil is oxidized, or if there's a lot of solvents in it, or some impurities, when you're injecting, 10 ml per week or 12 ml of oil per week, then that could be a significant amount of stuff, bad stuff putting in the body. So I think probably the guys who are redlining it, anytime you're redlining anything, like a race car, you're redlining it, then boom, the engine can blow, because you're putting so much stress on that. You're trying to get 100% out of something, whereas if you drive an engine at 70%, it's not going to blow. You can drive it forever. So it's the same thing with the body. It's like anytime you go 100%, you risk really breaking something. That's why, again, with the anabolic matrix pathways, if you just give 50% attention to every pathway instead of 100% attention to any one, or intensity to any one pathway, then we're not going to have any side effects. It's much healthier and nothing breaks. Um, on When he was such a bloated mess, what he might have done is had temporary diabetes. Maybe he was pushing so hard for the competition, using a lot of insulin, and all of a sudden the insulin stopped working,
Mm.
lost his sensitivity to it, and then to get regained sensitivity to insulin, he'd have to take a step backwards. He'd have to cut the food, he'd have to not use insulin, he'd probably have to lose a lot. So, I think that's a perfect example of redlining, having a lot of side effects, and then having to take steps backwards. If you could predict the future, you would redline as close as possible
Yeah.
without going over it. But it's like a game. It's just like this game, like that slider game when you slide on the stand, the thing, and if you go over the edge, you lose completely. But if you fall too short, at least you might get some points.
Yeah.
Like redlining bodybuilding all the way is like you risk falling off the end and then it's game over. So, but you don't know where the end is unless you experiment a lot. So, I'm all for getting as close to redlining as early as possible and not wasting time. But it's hard to do without the data of what redlining is for your body at each pathway. So I think as a professional competitive bodybuilder, you have to know where the red lines are for each pathway. You have to experiment with each pathway. You have to experiment with a thyroid pathway and see what 25 micrograms of T3 does versus 50 versus 75 versus 100.
Mhm.
And then know, okay, well, most people are going to fall around 50 micrograms to be effective, but they don't know unless they maybe experiment with other pathways. So if I'm going to be a professional bodybuilder, if I'm like a Sam Sulek right now, who has the potential to be really big, I would use this time right now not to just keep trying to get as big as possible, but to try testing out redlining each pathway as a scientific experiment and know where my limits are, and then put it all together.
Mm.
That's how I would approach it. If it was my job, if I was a professional, I would try to redline as much as possible, but only with the data of what redlining it is for me for each pathway.
Mm. Mm. I love that. Your scientific brain coming in. Love it. And so with genetics, how do you know when you don't have the genetics to use steroids? So I guess you'd still look natty.
Genetics to use steroids like the body shape for the stage, or the genetics like someone is going to have side effects for very little benefit?
T Tell me both.
Well, uh, a lot of people look in the mirror and they think they look worse than they actually are. Probably because they compare themselves to Instagram or whatever. They probably look better than they think. But then there's a lot of guys or a lot of people also who are delusional that they look so good that they think they're amazing. And I've had I've been very curious psychologically about these people, like these people who think that they have the greatest body in the world, but who have really terrible physique. And I think something they have in common is that nobody tells them they have a terrible physique because other people are afraid that it will psychologically damage them. So it's just what I see in common with these people when I really psychologically get to know them. They need to have a stronger self-image that's not dependent on, yeah, I don't know, but that's the best way to say it. How do they fix it? I don't know. They need to drop the ego and realize who they are, what they are, but they have to get feedback from other people.
Yeah, yeah.
Mainly. Okay, let's say that that's the solution is to get feedback from other people, but don't make the other person think that if they give you negative feedback that it's gonna like destroy them or something, you know? It's like some people want feedback just to feel good, and if they don't get it, they're gonna, feel really bad. And then other people get that vibe and they're like, well, I don't want to give real feedback. I don't want to hurt this person's feelings. So I'm just, okay, yeah, it looks great. So I think really got to ask for harsh feedback and brace for hard feedback to avoid becoming that person who's delusional, thinking they have an amazing potential in bodybuilding. They go. And then, like every bodybuilding competition you go to, there's some of these guys on stage who everybody in the audience thinks this person can't possibly be serious. This must be a joke. How could this person get on stage? They look absolutely awful. Like there'll be like six bodybuilders up there like, wow, amazing physique. This one guy looks like he never lifted in his life, but he actually is going through it like he thinks he did. And bravo for doing that and being brave. But I hope that they're not so delusional that they think they're actually gonna to win. Still do it for fun, do it for the experience, warm up for a future in it if you want to. Yeah, it's a good thing. Everybody should get on stage. Why not? But just brace your personality for reality.
Mm. And if I mean, you can, like I said about I'm not genetically gifted, and with PDs, I'm more competitive, but there's going to be a shelf life potentially for me and how competitive I can be. You got to be realistic, but like you say, I always say this, you don't want yes men that are like, yeah, you're going to win a pro card, you're going to win this, you're going to win that, and then you step on stage and yeah, savage, savage.
Oh, but what's a good thing though is how there's like 600 bikini girls at every show now. All 600 of them, like most of them think they go into that thinking they're going to win because all their friends told them they're amazing and they're beautiful and they're a goddess. And I just think I think it's absolutely wonderful to watch all these women's egos get crushed and come back down to reality because living in the reality is a good thing.
Yeah.
People need a reality check once in
For
a while.
sure.
But it doesn't last very long. These same women that get up there and think that they're goddesses for later building the ego back. And I just wish they had it all. Everybody just could keep a realistic view.
Yeah,
So
expectation.
because then they can make better decisions based on it. They can actually focus on what they need to improve. It's just better that way.
Yeah, for sure. Now I'm
Thank
gonna
goodness for the bodybuilding stage, really. The bodybuilding stage is a very important service to humanity. Otherwise, you'd have a lot of crazy people running around thinking that they're gods and they need a reality check.
You can get that when you're half naked on stage. I'm going to ask you a question for the last wrap up of our episode today. Have you experienced any really bad side effects from certain compounds that you would then not use those compounds again?
Winstrol dried out my joints horribly,
Okay.
and that's a really big risk for injuries. And injuries are really terrible. So, like tearing some elbow tendons or something like that, that is a huge risk. Also, side effect of some things like taking Superdrol or maybe Anadrol, some things that increase strength a lot, is the strength of the muscle goes up faster than the tendon. So that's another injury point. See, I'm getting older. I think about injuries as like the main side effect because I never had really an acne side effect from steroids. I didn't have much of a hair loss problem from steroids. Uh, Tren giving me, night sweats and anxiety, difficulty sleeping, aggression, that definitely was there. But I testosterone definitely making me bloated, but I don't use high test anymore. My blood pressure going up and stuff like that. Oh, blood pressure. A lot of the steroids give me high blood pressure.
Mm.
I gotta watch that because then people don't think about that, and then they have problems with their kidneys later and heart problems. Um, yeah, that's DECA. I can't if I as soon as I shoot DECA, I have gyno instantly,
Yeah.
and I can't get an erection. Like
Mm.
I'm super sensitive to DECA.
Mm.
So I stay away from DECA completely, which is tough because one of the greatest experiences I ever had was when I first shot DECA, and then I went on a 5 mile run for like a charity event type of thing or something like that. And I don't usually do those things, but I had to walk it, and my legs were so pumped I could barely finish the walk. I was like the last one to finish, and I felt like I had to crawl over the finish line. Why not? It was probably not even 5 miles. It was probably 5 kilometers, which is a lot shorter than 5 miles. But I
Yeah.
mean, it was absolutely pathetic. I couldn't believe how much that affected me.
Mm.
But the point is, it was like it was. I got such a crazy pump in my legs that my legs were like lifting like metal blocks. Like like my cat, even just walking, and my calves were like, what? You know?
So get on the decker for a crazy pump, guys.
What happened that day? I don't know. Yeah, but then not. I mean, people get a good pump from DECA, but nothing like this was out of control. I'm not sure what all the different elements that came together to make it happen. But I want to feel that again sometime. It's been a while since I felt a pump like
On your deathbed, hit me with the
that.
fucking decker. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, Tony. We've covered loads
Yes.
today, like so much, so much.
Yeah, thank you. And I got a new project coming up soon. I'll tell you more about it in like maybe 10 days from now. I'll have some interesting things to show you because I think you'll like it. It's for females.
Oh,
It's
cool.
a biohacking philosophy for females that I think will fit in really good with what you're doing. So you could use it. Also.
Okay. Oh, I look forward to that. And I'm glad we could be with you through the hypo. I love
Yeah, I feel so
it.
much better now. Thanks for giving me the time to carve up.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Sarah.
See you later.
Bye bye.